This is part 2 of last week's podcast. Welcome to CV Ministries Church Security Through Prevention podcast. I am your host, Daniel Blevins. My guest this week is James McGarvey. James is one of 3 of the church safety guys and has brought his many years as an EMT and firefighter to his 10 years of leading his safety team at his church. James has had many roles at his church over the years and sees the importance of having a ministry focus in church safety and security. As you will hear today, James has written several books that are impacting lives in and out of the church. This is a 2-part podcast and we could have just kept going. If you don't know already, Amazon has recently jumped into hosting podcasts, and we can be found there now. Amazon joins a multitude of other locations that are playing our podcasts, so it's not too hard to find where we're at. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And as always, as you listen, think about who and what topics you'd like to hear in the future. Please take a few minutes and click on the Google review link that we've included in the show notes, and go out to Google and leave us a great review. All right, so let's get to know James and the ministry work that he is doing. Yeah, and I think, that you talked about, people question that need for security. Well, 2 things. One, I want to back up a little bit and say, how great it was that of the support you had from your leadership, because not every church is blessed that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And to see that, I get a lot of emails, as I'm sure you get communication as well, as how do I communicate with my leadership, or how do we get them to understand, or whatever that case is, to be able, and our church was that way too. We had great support from our leadership. Ours was obviously triggered from the New Life shooting down the street, and us being the second big church in town compared to them, it was like, okay, we need to step up and do something at this point. The other thing that's been really kind of cool, is you gave the stats to people, and we didn't have. Well, let me say this. As I'm around the country, I get a lot of different feedback in regards to church security, or as I talk with different people. Why do we have to have church security? Or now it's more of it's unfortunate we have to have church security. I get less of the why and more that it's unfortunate, and a lot of it's from people that probably grew up in church like myself or you, to where the church doors were always open. I could go hang out. I could go play foosball. I could go, whatever, as a young kid. From Sunday school, Sunday school was over. Great. I could run and go find my parents. I didn't have to wait for a parent to come check me out. Parents were going to visit with other parents for quite some time anyway. We would just run around. Sure. We can't do that anymore. The whole and I think it's hard for people to make that mental shift that, well, it's not safe to just let your kids run around because kids get taken from churches. It's not safe. It's just all these different things. It changes that dynamic, and I think it's really, really hard for a lot of people to make that shift. I do think it's happening, but I just think it is hard. In that
it is. I mean, we actually to that point this past weekend, I was on the schedule at my church this past Sunday, and I had a new family come in, and they were dropping their daughter off, and it was their only daughter. And this was the second time, I believe, they were at our church. And so they wanted to drop her off at the class. And, we have, in our church, we have the kids areas secured, and you can't get to them without going through access control and several layers of people as well. But in this particular case, they were new parents, and they were like, we just want to see the classroom. And I said, you know what? I said, the only folks that are allowed to give tours would be myself or one of the pastors. And I said, I would be happy to give you a tour. And they said, well, we've already seen it, but we just want to hang out. And I said, I'm sorry, you want to hang out? And they said, yeah, we want to drop our daughter off, but we just want to sit with her through the service. And I said, just our policy is that we don't allow adults or parents to hang out during the class. And so I explained that to them several times, and they didn't understand it. And I went through explaining we background check our folks. We have a high caliber of volunteers. We have a strict process. But they had never, and to your point, they had never experienced a church where that was not allowed. And we're seeing more and more of that as well. But as much as we have to explain, hey, we're kind of like a school now where the kids go, you're not allowed unless you're authorized. We've seen parents take advantage of that. We've had situations where we've had parents that had a restraining order or were separated, and one was trying to get in to get the kids out and do it behind the other one's back. And so, again, we've thankfully nothing, like I said before, nothing, God's watched over us and protected us with some of the things that we've dealt with over the years. But at the same point, it's just kind of, it's brought to light that you're absolutely right. Our culture has changed, and unfortunately, I think as more and more things happen, and we see spikes of people interested in church safety and security, it's more of what they consider a necessary evil. Asking that question. Well, it's unfortunate that we need it now, but not. We've kind of moved past the why to, how do we get it started? In a lot of cases.
Yeah, you mentioned that, domestic spillover, essentially, where one parent doesn't wants to get the kid out of there, is trying to do it behind the other's back, is actually a scenario I run at our seminar, because it is very realistic, and we create a stressful environment for people to try and de-escalate in that. And it's amazing to watch people do it, or not do it is most often the case. They just don't know exactly what to do. They think they do until the adrenaline gets going, and they really have to react to that. And so it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun, doing those scenarios with that. Something I was going to mention is, something, it's just kind of a cool thing, is the way God's worked it out. But every medical emergency that we've had on our campus, we've been able to clear the fire truck and EMS out of there before the transition of services happens. Let's say it's a Sunday, so we have two. And so it's worked out in such a way that we have the medical emergency, we'll get EMS in there, and an ambulance and so on, and turn around and have them out before we have, all these cars, leaving, coming in, leaving the parking lot. It's been one of those things. It's like, okay, Lord, thanks for doing that again, to have all that done, and we didn't have to stop traffic or whatever that looks like. So it's just been, one of those unique things.
Yeah, we had a day I think it was about 2 years ago, and it was, it's a story for another time, but we had an instance where someone had come to our Easter play or pageant, and they had gotten saved, and they were bringing their family to church, and they were involved in a pretty significant local court case. And so individuals within that court case actually decided to follow them to our church to basically intimidate this gal into not giving a testimony the next day. And through a course of events, 5 of the individuals that came into the church that were trying to intimidate this gal, of the 5, 2 of them actually had outstanding warrants. And so we kind of had a situation where we had to scramble, and it was very similar to that, where between services we were like, okay, we have all this law enforcement here. We're trying to not make a scene. We're trying to address all this, and we ended up doing it, and everything went amazingly well, to the point of getting a commendation from local law enforcement with how we handled it and how we responded. But that evening it was crazy, because we came back and we were all exhausted from how long that situation took. and one of the ushers, who's a good friend of mine, actually collapsed and stopped breathing on me. It literally, like, I walked up to him and I said, "Are you okay?" And his entire body just collapsed on me, and I laid him down and I started doing CPR on him, and we had called for an ambulance, and as it would happen, there was actually a rescue truck literally outside our um, outside of our church building at the intersection in front of the church. And so when they got the call, they literally pulled in, and we had medics there within probably 2 to 3 minutes of him actually collapsing. And so we were able to resuscitate him and kind of figure out what was going on, what happened. But that was, again, another day where it's like, do things like that don't happen every day, thankfully.
Right.
But it's one of those, when we look at it, we try and take things pretty seriously. I mean, one of the things that we always do is we always pray before each service. And I'm convinced, in the older I get and the more I'm involved with church safety, the more I'm convinced in spiritual warfare. And I believe that a lot of things like this, happen. A lot of these things happen to churches. And the reason they happen is because, of just things that Satan has pushed forward. And from that aspect, if he can do something distracting to the church as they're meeting, to take somebody's focus off of the message or off of something like that, then he'll do what he can do to get away with it. So the older I get, the more I realize that with dealing with church safety and security, one of the biggest resources is prayer. And definitely praying for the individuals as a team, and then for the church as well, that while we serve, that those that are preaching or whatnot would be able to hear and act on it accordingly.
Yeah, I truly believe that too. Prayer is a big thing. We start ours out with prayer every week, before every service. And I think that is important because we are standing on the wall. We are, something I do every morning, and I lead a men's group, and something I'm always telling them, that we talk about is, for me, it's not putting on my armor necessarily. It's picking up my manna. If we don't pick up our manna every day, then we're going hungry, right? It's if in our personal life we're not doing that, then we're going hungry. And then how are we effectively serving in that? How can we be ready to put on our armor? And because Satan does want to attack and take every opportunity to do that he can. We just want to take a quick break here to let you know how to contact us and where to find out more about our national seminar. I see communities that may know why church security is important, but they may not be doing anything about it or don't know how to do it well. Our national seminars are for ushers, greeters, children's workers, staff, volunteers, your security teams, and other ministries in your community. We say that this is a level 1 training that is designed to help equip you to serve well in your various ministries while maintaining a safe place for people to come. Getting churches on the same or similar page when it comes to security will only make the community safer as well. The easiest way to find out more information or to contact us is to go to cv-ministries.com. There you'll find a variety of training DVDs and books, with more being developed all the time. There's also a place at the bottom of the page where you can sign up for our monthly newsletter and to be able to get more information. We would love your feedback on topics or guests that you would like to hear on future podcasts. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, let's get back to the podcast.
For sure. And, honestly, that's one of the reasons, one of the resources that we've put together is the church safety guys have been, actually this year has been a set of devotionals. And, it's probably a good moment to bring those up. But one of the key ideas that we had, that we came up with was there just really didn't seem like a lot that was really tailored specifically for folks that were serving in that ministry, and being able to relate and understand with folks that, okay, this is how people act, and this is, this is encouragement for you when someone comes up to you and says, your ministry is a game, you're just playing this, versus this is the importance of this ministry. And so, one of the projects, the first project that Paul and I actually worked on together was called War Ready. And it's a 31-day devotional, but it actually has a component where people can get physically fit and, just start slow, but do exercise and strengthen their body, and as well as strengthening their mind and their spirit. And we've had some great responses with that from folks, contacting us and saying, look, I was, a couch potato. And it's not anything like lose 30 pounds in 6 days or, anything. We don't say obviously anything crazy like that.
Right.
But several people have reached out to us and said, look, that was just the motivation that I needed to get back into shape, to stay in shape physically, and, actually grow my walk with the Lord. And so when we started hearing some of the positive examples of how God used that, I turned around and actually wrote another devotional, which is called The Road Less Traveled. And that, in a sense, kind of chronicles some of my experiences as an EMT firefighter, but also with application to church safety. And then I thought, okay, we're done. I'm like, this is it. We've got 2 devotionals and we're good to go. And really interesting, in a 24-hour period, God kind of said to me, I don't think you're done yet. I think you can write one more thing that's encouraging. And I started thinking, if I was going to write something that would try and encourage people, what would it be? And one thing that kind of clicked into my mind was that a lot of folks that are in public safety, their ministry is in church safety and security. And so we have a ton of folks that serve as directors or as volunteers that are law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs, etc. And so my thought was, well, I haven't really done anything towards law enforcement. And so through literally crazy events in 24 hours, I'm sitting at my computer working on this project. And, it was amazing to me how God worked it out. And this last project is called To Protect and Serve. And so
don't say it's the last project. It's just your most current.
Oh, well, I've been saying it's the last one.
Yeah, because you say that, and God, you say that to God, and He's like, "Yeah, right."
For sure, right? Because that's what I said on the second one. But
yep,
the cool thing about this book, real quick, is just that originally the cover art, and that's kind of like they always say, they'll save the last for the best. But the cover art to me really strikes a chord, and the reason is because the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office is in Southern California. They are the second or third largest sheriff's office in the U.S. And that was actually the department that I worked with when I lived in California. And so when I started looking at cover art for this project, I was like, okay, I'm going to look for a police cruiser, and that's what we're going to use from that sheriff's office. And so I pulled up this picture that's now on the cover of this book, and the officer in the picture is actually kneeling by his cruiser. And the officer's name, I did a little bit of research and found that this was a picture that the officer had posted in California on their Facebook page. And the officer, before he went on a shift every day, he kneels and he prays for himself and his partner in those serving in that precinct or district. And so when I saw this picture, I'm like, what an encouragement to other law enforcement to be able to say, hey, you know what, this book is written for you. So I reached out, and I'm like, this guy doesn't know me from Adam, right? So I reach out to this guy, happen to email him, and I said, I'm taking a shot here. I think this is the right person. If you're in this picture, could you respond back? Less than 24 hours later, he emails me back, and he said, I would be honored if you used my picture in your project. And so what I did at that point was, rather than just make a devotional, I went to a bunch of different retired and active law enforcement officers through the U.S. And I said, you know what, I want to put your story of encouragement in this book so that I can hand it out to officers as a tool to encourage them. And so they did. And so the back of the book, we have stories in there from officers, like I said, around the U.S. that have said, hey, I just want to encourage you because I know where you're at. I know I've been there too. And what was crazy about it is somebody reached out to me and said, hey, can you tell me, and all of our books have been spiritually minded with it being a devotional. I had never put the gospel message in the book, and I always thought my target audience is going to be the church. So I don't think that they necessarily need to hear it. And a friend of mine reached out and said, look, my brother is a state trooper, and I've been trying to witness to him. And as soon as that book comes out, I want to give him a copy. And so something, I think it was probably the Holy Spirit just kind of said, why don't you put a message in there about and use it as a tool about the gospel? And so I went back through, and actually the protect and serve. It's just been amazing. I mean, God has taken it and blessed it. We have probably, I think, 25 different police departments now have graciously received copies and have passed it out to officers. We have police chaplains handing it out in over 10 different states around the U.S. And, I just actually had a church contact me yesterday, and they said, we want to give these away to the folks, the men and women that are serving in our precinct, to let them know that we're supporting them and we care about them and what they're doing. And so it's really just exploded. And again, it's not ever something that I would have thought this is what's going to happen. But I knew, just from God putting it on my heart, that I knew that it was going to be a special project. And, certainly if someone's interested in donating or being part of that project, they can get more information on our website, which is churchsafetyguys.com. But all of our books or devotionals are available on Amazon. And then if there's a church that wants to do a bulk purchase or something like that, they can reach out to us through our website. And we've set up a way that we can actually help them out with that. So, but it's, just amazing to me that, again, it's something. And again, I go back to every day. It's like, wow, I never would have thought that God would move in this way, or that this would happen or that would happen. I did it because I thought it was right. And, God's kind of stepped in and said, hey, let's go this direction with it. So.
Yeah, and I think it's a great project, and something that, mostly because of my wife's role at the church, but we have, we hire extra duty officers at our church when we are having regular church, of course, and they look at our church as, they call it their church. I mean, they sign up to serve or to do their extra duty at our church, and they love it. We treat them, like family. there.
Mm-hmm.
They respect, they know the train that we train actually more than they do. Kind of like you were telling about earlier, how that community college was like, oh, I can't believe you guys are training like this. It's the same sort of thing. Law enforcement is like, we wish we had the budget, to train like you guys do, but they get the real world stuff all the
Sure.
time. So we have to train. But what our church has done is reached out to them during this time, and usually, my wife always baked treats every week for the officers. That was a highlight for them. If it was store bought, they wouldn't eat it, but they would eat whatever she baked. And so, what officer's going to turn away, fresh baked food? And so we've dropped off at a couple of the precincts some food, where the officers that normally would serve at our church. But I think this is a great, like you said, I think this could be something that I would love to see. I know for our church in particular, we have a fairly healthy budget for church security. And this would be, I think, a worthwhile opportunity for church security teams to reach out to their local law enforcement. We're always talking about building that relationship with your local law enforcement in your community anyway. Here's an opportunity to do that, and not just law enforcement, because it's EMS. I mean, it's first responders essentially, correct?
Sure. And that's honestly all of and it's funny because people have asked me and they've said, well, you know, do you do you recommend a specific book for me with this specific background, if I can talk? And honestly, any individual, any safety team member, any person, my pastor actually picked up one of the books, and he's like, I'm reading through this because you've got some great stuff in here. So anybody can read any of the books, truly, but it's from the emphasis. I think that with Protect and Serve, which is the last or the third one, I think some of my experience working directly with law enforcement is probably more in that one. Just things that I've seen, whether it's trying to encourage someone from I don't know. I don't even know where to begin. I think honestly, law enforcement officers deal with so much today, and I had the opportunity in this situation. I had an opportunity to actually through some generous donations that our ministry received, we were able to actually send a case of these to the precinct where the officer on the cover works. And, we sent it to him and said, hey, hand it out, give it out to people, do whatever you want to with it. And they've already contacted us and said, thank you so much. It means so much that, that we're associated with this project and this task. And, with the picture, it's interesting. I make a big deal out of it, but originally when the picture was on social media, it had a Bible verse under it, and it was Matthew 5:9, which is blessed are the peacemakers. And, people started going nuts, and this was about 2 years ago. People started going nuts saying, well, that's not separating God and church and state, and you've got all of this stuff going on. And so the sheriff's department, the actual sheriff at the time, said, look, I'll take the Bible verse off of it and I'll leave just the picture. But if you respond, if you respond to this social media post and you're happy with it, then I'll leave the picture there. Otherwise, I'll pull the whole thing. And the overwhelming response that they got from California, from all across the country, was, leave it there. It's a good reminder to us to pray for folks that are serving, and that's what really that's what that's what my heart was with the project, to just be able to say, okay, you know what, here's an opportunity. Give it to somebody that maybe maybe they're a believer, maybe they're not, but if you're using it yourself, that's great. When you look at the cover, every time you look at the cover, pray for an officer that because every day they're dealing with more and more that in some cases, we can't even fathom some of the stuff that they're having to deal with. So, but it's definitely we've had a few churches contact us and say, we'd love to give it out to the officers in our congregation. And like I said, if someone's interested in doing that, they're welcome to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to help them with it.
And I'll make sure in the show notes that we have links to both your webpage and the Facebook link if they want to join. It is a private group, which is great. Not like there's a huge amount of screening that goes into play, but it's just not for everybody to post in, which is, I think, a great, keeps it good, the conversation's good. But we'll make sure we get links out to that, and hopefully they'll join your page and participate in that aspect as well. There's one thing that that came to mind. I want to, before we close out today, is, you talked about the parents that wanted to go and just hang out in the children's area, right? Mm-hmm. So when I designed the camera system at our church and installed it, something that we did, and it has just been a huge thing that I would recommend to churches, is not if you're going to install cameras, hopefully you are, but, and that's a whole nother conversation, but we have a giant flat screen TV outside the secured area for the parents to see exactly what's going on in that room. Usually we have 2 or 3 angles per classroom for them to be able to, we can't have you hang out, but you know what? You're more than welcome to check on your child and see what's going on, right here. It just kind of gives that alternative for them. Because we're the same way. Parents aren't just going to hang out typically. I don't believe they hang out in any way, but and oftentimes the parents, especially if the child is having separation anxiety in any way, they're not usually away from mom, dad, that just the sight of mom and dad sometimes will set them off. And so that's another reason why we've kind of, done these flat screen TVs with a unique feed that just shows the rooms and what's going on in there. But it was just something that came to mind.
We have actually just recently finished redoing our kids area, and that was actually something that we're in the middle of doing ourselves, is actually putting up a screen so that individuals could see what's going on, and for, I think, not only for the parents but for the workers as well. I think in this day and age, I think extra accountability is good, right. And it's just let's make it as secure as possible so everyone knows where the cameras are. But if you know that someone's regularly watching the cameras, or you're subject to that, it just ensures a high quality with instruction, but also, just kind of keeps things in order and safe and secure. So.
Yeah, we've actually used our camera system. A child made an accusation against the teacher. We went back, we watched it like 3 times. No validity to the accusation. We turned it over to the children's director and the footage and our assessment of it, and they went to the parents and they said, "Okay, that's awesome. We'll talk with our child and find out where this came from and why." Why they said this. It protects the child, but it also protects the workers. And the cool thing is we never even told this dad that was in there working with the kids. We never even told him that it was ever viewed, or because we don't want it to be an embarrassment or him to feel like I can't serve there or whatever the case is. So, it was just low key between us, children's department, and the parents, and it, the cameras are a huge thing nowadays, and it goes back to, well, it's not the way we used to do church, but yet, it's kind of the way we have to do church, with everybody wanting to sue for everything. But not to take away from the fundraiser aspect of your book, I think that's huge. And I definitely want to see that do very, very well, and to kind of explode across the country. I'll get something out on my webpage and Facebook as well, and then when my newsletter goes out, we'll get that in there too, because I think you're doing you and the other guys, all three of you, are just doing great work. In a great direction for church security, moving it in a ministry-minded focus, and not just for the churches, but you're reaching out to the communities, which is equally important. You talked about bringing smaller churches in for training or whatever the case is. I always tell people it just makes for a stronger community when you're doing things together.
Oh, absolutely. We've had several situations too where we've had and this is actually to the church safety and security group, but we had one situation where a gentleman said, "Look, I'm hosting this Christmas event and my entire team called off. Is there any way, I need prayer. I need you to pray for me because my entire team disappeared." And, I went in the group and I posted and I said, his church is right here. It's located in Tennessee. Is there any other surrounding churches that might be able to step in and help him out? And not even joking, within 2 or 3 hours, he had 3 churches that said, "Tell us what you need. You need people. We'll send bodies your way. And we'll be there to help you get through this." So absolutely. I think, and we've had the same relationship with, because our church is a little bit larger in the Columbus suburbs. We've had situations in the past where other churches have contacted us and said, maybe this situation has a higher threat level and we could use a couple extra people. Is there someone that you guys could send over to help us with? And any situation like that, obviously we always look at insurance and we look at training and we look at, liability and that sort of thing as well. But the ability to be able to step in and have a significantly trained team that can go minister to other churches is just an awesome thing. So.
Yeah, it really is. Well, James, I know we could probably keep going, and this is far
Sure.
longer than my normal podcast would go. So this is going to be probably easily a 2-parter, just so people can have a break. But I sure appreciate you taking time today to do this with me. It's been a lot of fun, and it's been great to hear how God is using you in the realm of church security, but not just that, but in your community. I think, like I said, you can't say it's your last book. We just don't know where God's going to lead us next.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to this podcast. If you really enjoyed it and you found it of benefit to you, we really appreciate your feedback. There's several different ways that you can provide us feedback. One of them is to subscribe to the podcast, is to share it with others, and another is to contact us directly, particularly if you have any questions or concerns, or you want more information on how to host a seminar in your community. You can contact me directly at danielblevins@cv@heart.com, or you can go to our website. That's cv-ministries.com. Both of those will get you in the right direction. Until next time, make sure that you're out there protecting the flock with a heart of service.